to me, that seems like the obvious path that they would want to follow, or just encourage him to sell his team, because that path does not involve subjecting themselves to the risk of having Congress. In the books is a big deal. When we're in negotiations, we try to do everything to understand what their real financial, what happens really in the finances of a team, because that's how they construct all their arguments. It's based on the fact that they're not making enough money. Those owners will do anything to make sure that no one gets a piece of them books. So I can't imagine that they're gonna, I mean, it was an invitation. It wasn't a subpoena. Roger ain't going to talk to nobody, and neither is Dan.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for watching on YouTube. Rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars, I'm inclined to believe you are a hater. It is Foxworth Friday. Domonique Foxworth, what's going on?
Man, a lot. It feels like there's always a lot. I guess I need to appreciate these times before the summer hits for real, and there's not a lot.
It's coming. That is correct. It is absolutely coming. Just to let you guys know, we're going to talk about some of the holdout maybes, retirement maybes that are going on in the NFL. Also a reminder to you, the Right Time Book Club starting June 13th, King of the World by David Remnick. Check it out. It is an excellent Pulitzer Prize winning biography of Muhammad Ali. Want you to get that. Also hit the voicemail line, 860-516-4119. Tell us about a fantasy football dispute that you yourself have witnessed, very similar to Tommy Pham and Jock Peterson. But first, we're going to stick with baseball a little bit. Dominic, we talked a bit about the Tim Anderson, Josh Donaldson thing. Like, we talked mostly about me talking to Tim Anderson. But you had not seen what happened with Josh Donaldson yesterday. And I was just sitting at the crib and I was reading this. And so the headline is, Donaldson, Yankees' lack of support was hurtful. Okay. Oh, wow. I looked on the page. When I looked on the page, you know what was there? A clip of The Right Time with Tim Anderson talking about what was going on. I see you.com. There we go. Still remembering our work here. All right. So here is what Josh Donaldson said. Because, you know, Aaron Boone, the manager, was like, yep, he shouldn't have done that. Aaron Judge was like, nope, I didn't think that was the right thing to do. Here's what Josh Donaldson said. I think that was tough to hear for sure, just for the simple fact that I pride myself on being a good teammate, and everywhere I've went, every organization that I've been a part of, minus Oakland, has offered me extensions, has wanted me to stay back. They've showed that they wanted me a part of their team. Obviously, it didn't work out that way, and that's just the business end of it. And also, everywhere I went, I've won. I think part of winning is having good team chemistry, and I've taken pride everywhere I've went. I've always tried to help people try to get better. Yeah, and the thing was, one of his former teammates played for the White Sox and said he wasn't a fan of Donaldson. He's like, I know Liam has come out a couple of times and said some stuff about me. It's weird because I hear one thing, then when I see him, it's different. So it's definitely been confusing for that. I'm not saying that every one of my teammates I've always been best friends with. I think everybody wanted to have a say, but they don't know my heart. I do feel bad that the Robinson family, I never wanted them to feel their name ever be regarded in a bad light. That's why I issued the apology.
Oh, gosh.
Yes. Hold on. We got a little more. He basically blamed it all on the White Sox. He says, I think when it comes down to it, over the last couple of years, there's been animosity from their team towards me, and I don't really have a problem with the team. I think there's some stuff that was in question from last year. And by the way, he's like, he doesn't know why he has beef with the team. This is the next paragraph in the story. Last season in Chicago, Donaldson alleged ace Lucas Giolito had benefited from the use of illegal sticky substances. He said he intends to stop his chattiness with the White Sox. This dude has no clue that people don't like him and cannot figure out why it is that people don't like him, even though it seems to be abundantly clear why it is that people don't like him.
If you're the one that people don't like, you never know you're the one that people don't like. Like, I don't think that's rare. If you have like a propensity to do, I don't even know the word that's not profane, to do these type of things, you know, like to be poking somebody where they don't want to be poked with nicknames that they obviously don't like. You out here dry snitching. Ain't nobody asked you about what other people is using. And even if they did, no reason for you to tell. I don't know what else he has done, but I heard, I didn't read that article, but when this all came out, I heard like generally both of them or not both of them, Donaldson, and then the Pham case is different. Those two guys I kind of heard, they aren't really liked that much around baseball. In baseball, you live with them dudes, so you really get to know them, and yeah, sometimes you gotta slap them.
I'm about to shoot you something. I know the video producers get worried when they see me looking at the phone, but I'm doing this so that I can send you something for you to look at. I don't want you to talk about what you see on your phone, but I just want you to look at it. And I'm just saying that Josh Donaldson need to. All right, I said that to you before. That's right.
You said that to me. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I look at that Josh Donaldson like, yo, tell your crew to be easy. Like, ease up, dog. Just let this thing pass before it gets worse for you.
That's generally the move. You don't want people to start digging. You just go ahead and keep it moving.
And see, and this is... It's been very interesting to me to see the way the baseball press has handled this. And you know this, and I think that the people who think they hate me don't quite understand this about me, but you worked with me for years, and you could demonstrate this. I don't really spend a lot of time trying to litigate who is and is not a racist, right? Like, I just don't think, the actions are the part that matter. Like, I don't spend a lot of time trying to get to the bottom of it, right? But the general public in these moments is always absolutely concerned with whether somebody is a racist or is this thing racist, right? They always, that's always a thing. But when it happens, we always get into we don't know his heart, right? Like that's the game that people play. And by the way, there's something to that, right? Yeah. You don't know what somebody's heart is, but you do know what people do.
Right.
And people around baseball demonstrated no interest in being like, hey, maybe we should look into what Josh Donaldson does, right? Because, by the way, I don't think they need to look into it that much because they there all the time, too. Like, you talk about how, they all around each other, the writers and everybody else is all around them dudes, man. They know Josh Donaldson. They know what time it is in whatever direction it is. They ain't got to pretend like it's a mystery. Yet everybody gets handcuffed in these moments, and they suddenly like, oh, I don't know, man. I can't, put no thing on his head to read his brain or nothing like that. So I'm can we talk about something else, please?
This impacts all of the stories. I had a long conversation with Mina yesterday about a number of things, but one of them was the Deshaun Watson stuff, like more allegations coming up, and her and I just kind of, it's an obvious thing, but it just hit me in that moment. It's like we personalize things. It's just human nature, I guess. And when you start to hear a story, I think you start to put yourself in the shoes of the person you're most like. And I think that's probably what happens with a lot of people around, because none of us are perfect. Like, if you went through the entire history of my life, you can find things that I did that were insensitive on a number of different levels. So when I see somebody else doing something and I'm a writer or a reporter, I'm like, man, I don't know his heart. Because even though you out here doing some racist stuff or some sexist stuff or whatever type of stuff you doing, you want people to look at you and be like, he's a good person. And we talked about the Deshaun Watson stuff, and I was just kind of talking about it from, and you and I have been very outspoken and harder on Deshaun Watson than most people, but I was still talking about it from his perspective, whereas Mina, obviously, she identifies more with the women, which made for a really good conversation. But I think that's what's happening in this, and this ties to Dan Snyder. This ties to a bunch of things that are going on right now with the owners. People talk about Dan Snyder gonna get his team taken. Nah, because when they look at Dan Snyder, them other owners, they see themselves and maybe they mad at him, but they don't want to they don't want to set that precedent to have people all up in their stuff.
But see, what gets me about that, and I think there's something to it, is if we was talking about borderline stuff, and maybe that's the thing with Josh Donaldson, that the thing that he actually did that we know about here, right? The thing that's in the news is a borderline situation. And so people don't want to go there. But I don't think that people had any interest in seeing if there was anything past a borderline. You know what I mean? Because my inclination in that moment, when that happens, this would be my thought. Why don't you get on the phone with some of Josh Donaldson's Black and Latino teammates and ask them about what their experiences have been with him? Because it was notable that it was Aaron Judge that was like, nah, I shouldn't have done that, homie. You know, like the manager did too, don't get me wrong. But the 6'8" black dude was like, hey, dog. Hey, I bet you ain't gonna say that to me, right? You know, like, like maybe that's the direction that it goes in. But it's just, I find it just so genuinely dishonest in the way the media handles this, because they see it and they know that it could be a controversy, right? And it's the kind of thing that can get people a little riled up and a little charged up. And that's when they push it, but not for any actual exploration to figure out kind of what exactly is going on here. Because, see, here's the difference between baseball and these other sports, man. Like with basketball, there ain't really no place no white man feels safe doing nothing like that, right? like in baseball, you might feel like it. In football, it's some wild boys who might be willing to do it. But by and large, they ain't feeling too safe. Like Derek Wolfe might decide he gonna do something like that, right? And everybody gonna be like, come on, Derek, why you talking to me like that?
The tough thing about the Derek Wolfe situation is he's still in a D-line room. This stuff can potentially go on in an O-line room. Yeah. And that about it. Like maybe the quarterback room, that about it.
Yo, with Derek Wolfe, though, I just remember, and like Derek Wolfe was like outspoken, like, I'm about this Trump thing, right? Like, I want to be clear.
I remember.
I don't know. Here I go. I don't know Derek Wolfe's heart. But like, I really don't. But I want to make clear that I'm not trying to cast aspersions on him like past the Trump thing. But what I do know is after a team wins the Super Bowl, when they go do all the interviews. So we had all those Broncos on highly questionable in early 2016. And Dan used to always love to ask, like, who's the guy in the locker room nobody wants no problems with? And the answer to a man was Derek Wolfe. All I'm saying is Derek Wolfe might be able to say some wild stuff. Yeah, and cats be like, hey, man, come on, man. Like, you know we're not even going to do nothing, dog. Like, why you even got to be going like that? But in baseball, white man can get out here and feel okay, like, dropping this. But we're not going to explore it. And that gets me also to, like, Gabe Kapler. My buddy Nick did a good thing on his podcast about this. If you didn't understand that the problem with Kaepernick was not about the anthem and it was all about blackness, just look at the muted way that the Gabe Kapler thing was dealt with, where he decided he wasn't going to come out for the national anthem. Tony La Russa had something to say about it, but I saw a whole lot of people who came down hard on Kaepernick, who just let this one go. It just wasn't even something that they was willing to talk about because they didn't think it would actually get people stirred up, and so they just let it go.
Yeah, I think the media also in these situations, particularly the baseball media, that's what we're talking about right now, I think they see the Donaldson issue and what's the value in it for them to dig. Like, what do they get out of this? They aren't going to be celebrated for it. The team's going to hate him. The league's going to hate him. Donaldson's going to hate him, depending on what they uncover. Like, I don't know like you talk about incentives a lot. I don't know what in this incentive structure other than like doing your job, but you want to keep your job. It's hard for me to understand. And then you layer that with the fact that they probably identify with him when they look at the people who would be upset by this, and then they look at the guy who might have some things that are questionable or done some questionable things. They probably identify with that. They're like, I'm good. I don't know what's hard.
Here's the other thing. Intra-racially, intra-ethnically, whichever term you wish to use, there's often an implicit expectation of some, like, secret keeping.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you remember the wildly inflammatory story in Sports Illustrated with John Rocker in 1999, 2000, whichever year it was, but it was right around then. He was just so loose with all of that, right? Like the wildest thing to me in that John Rocker story, by the way, is, as I recall, they was like driving around Atlanta and it was some bad driver, and John Rocker was like, I bet it's an Asian driver. In Atlanta? Like, with all due respect, I've spent a lot of the last 25 years in Atlanta.
Gosh.
You just don't, maybe it's changed more recently, but I'm going to tell you, in the year 2000, you wouldn't just running, like blowing past Asians on the freeway. Like that just wasn't happening, right? Like, but he was so caught in it. Anyway, the story ran, and it just seemed very clear. he misunderstood who the white man was that was sitting next to him. The white man next to him was Jeff Pearlman, who I've known now for almost 20 years. I like Jeff a lot. Jeff's the dude that's going to write that, right? Like, Jeff is the dude to be mortified by what he had heard and decide, this is the story that I'm going to write about you. But Rocker clearly was operating on the expectation that we in the circle, we in the crew, you ain't going to say nothing about that, right? Black writers talk about this all the time with their expectation offered from black players. They're like, yo, I thought you was going to look out for me. But like, I think we understand that from black people because it ain't but so many of us in these spaces. Right now, the white man is just like, nah, man, we don't. Come on now. You know how it is. We don't talk about that stuff. And then we go from there.
I can't. There are some things that like I see other black people and we just know. Like, there's certain things that take place, and we're a black person I'd never met before. We look at each other, and we just know. It happened this morning, actually, after I dropped my kids off at school. Stopped at a place to get some food, and somebody was in there acting up, and me and a black lady was looking at each other while this person was acting up. Like, man, like, you know, you just know. And the idea that, and most of the time for us, it's like, it ain't fair is essentially what we're looking at each other saying. And the idea that some people might believe, some white people might believe that the thing that's understood is, at least in the John Rocker case, is racism's cool. We just got to cover it up. Like, that to me seems to be what some people believe is like the implicit understanding. And so me and this black lady watching this person make a big scene and slow it up for everybody because of whatever, they didn't get enough sugar in their coffee or something. And we looking like, like we know what this is. But he in a car with a random white man that he don't know from anybody and it just out here just slinging racists around. Like, to imagine that he got to the age, to imagine that he got to the age that he was and never learned to, like, that you got to mask this. You got to know, you got to, like, that is the scary part. Like, you never got to the place where you got to know that, oh, we got to slow down a little bit. I got to get to know you first. The man skipped right past all the bases of getting to know somebody and went right straight to the racism.
Yeah, but see, the thing with Rocker was, and like for those of y'all who don't know country white folks, like, this is the thing you don't understand. He from Macon, right? Yeah. So who knows what in the world in Macon, Georgia, he was here and slinging around amongst those people. Right. But John Rocker is also the dude that'll be like, because I think one of the things they talked to, you know, dudes who were in the minors with him, dudes that had made the show, like black dudes, and they were like, no, Rocker's not a racist. Like, Rocker will have these things that he thinks about everybody, but can kick it with you. Right. You see what I'm saying? And those guys, they don't get that, right? And by the way, they become interesting because very often the people who do get all the big stuff would not kick it with the you that John Rocker would kick it with, right? Like, that's the argument that he winds up making. But no, that cat like that don't even think he like that because he think he kicking it with these dudes. I just know with Josh Donaldson, if people want to get to the bottom of it, there's 3 questions you could ask him. I got them. Like, if you cover baseball and you want to know the 3 questions, you can hit me up. I don't do that job. I ain't going to do it for you. But I tell you, I can give you the 3 questions. And if you wanted to, you could have got to the bottom of it. But I don't want to go too deep into that because I want to talk to you about what I think is an interesting sort of new dawn in the NFL. With YouTube TV, watch live TV like cable. You can get started in minutes and watch the NBA Finals live on ABC. And without long-term contracts or hidden fees, YouTube TV lets you stay up to date with real-time stats and highlights of your favorite teams. YouTube TV, everything live TV should be. Try it free. New users only, terms apply, cancel anytime. I want to bring this up from a union perspective as you know, with your work with the Players Association. One thing the NFL absolutely tried to do was legislate the holdout out of the game, right? Like, they made the punishment so punitive for you holding out. And the holdout, I thought, was a necessary institutional construct because of the nature of these non-guaranteed deals. It was the only leverage that the player had. The owner can decide to rip up the contract. Therefore, the player should be able to also make a very similar decision and let you decide what your move is going to be. But this Kyler Murray thing is interesting because I don't think he would wind up holding out per se. However, it's a whole different ball game when you start having a quarterback with the prospect of holding out. Like, I feel like the leverage of the quarterback is much, much stronger because this dude is out here like, look, I'm supposed to get $35 million over the next 2 years. And if I'm going to be honest with y'all, I'm going to need my money right now. Y'all be out here. I'll be out here doing this road runner stuff, taking these licks. I'm going to need to get paid right now. And if he were to say, I'm not coming if y'all don't pay me, I don't see what choice they got other than to pay him. Do you?
No. Like the reason, the tough thing about the holdout and is what you said. They made it very punitive. But if you don't care about the penalty, then it's still there. Like, you still have the ability, like you used to be able to force the team to rescind the fines or pay your fines. Now, apparently, you can't do that. And it's like $50,000 a day, which is a lot of money. But it's not a lot of money if you're going to make 35 over 2 and you're negotiating for 50 over 1. So, all right, I can hold out for that. So it's not that punitive. But even if it is, like, incredibly punitive, if you got with guys like playing longer and longer, and maybe Kyler Murray won't be one of these guys because of the way he plays, but if you got the heart to sit out a year and like you really mean it, I don't think it's that like detrimental to you professionally, because they're going to pay you, especially at quarterback. They're going to pay you, or they're going to trade you to try to get something for you. They're not just going to let a legitimate franchise quarterback just sit around and do nothing for them. So like, they want to remove the leverage from the players in any way they can, but in your ability and your fortitude, like if you got it and he's made enough money, like I know we want to make more and more money, but he ain't coming off of off a 4th round deal like Dak was back in the day. This man has got number 1 overall pick money. If he want to live the rest of his life, he could live the rest of his life happily off this money that he got right now. So I'm with him. Sit out.
I'm surprised he ain't on Instagram at a batting cage. Yep. That happened yet? Like I feel like it's about that time for him to be out there, you know, like, oh, I love the smell of the leather of the glove, right? Like just to remind you guys, yep. I might consider going to do that other thing. Maybe, just throwing this out there at you, dog, just seeing if you might give it some consideration. Now, my question with the Cardinals with him is, how high is the ceiling on your little bitty quarterback? Because I think he is an incredible athlete. I think that he's a really good quarterback, right? Like, I don't want to reduce him to athlete playing quarterback, but I just don't know what you can do with a little bitty quarterback. Like, Russell Wilson was an interesting case, and they obviously won the Super Bowl with him, and I have not truly felt that he was an impediment to their success at any point, but when they won that Super Bowl, they won it on the back of defense, and they didn't ask that much of him. Mm-hmm. You still have to take a zillion sacks a year if you're going to have Russell Wilson, because of the things he's going to have to do to be able to see, because he's a little bitty quarterback. And so if I were the Cardinals, I would have some measure of reservation about how much exactly do we put in on this, given that this may be a guy that we can win a lot of games with but can't win a Super Bowl. However, he's a guy you can win a lot of games with, and you ain't just about to go out here and find another one. Exactly. There's not one laying around that you can pick up off the waiver wire. So you're just going to have to pay this man. Right.
And I don't understand I don't know the full, like, dynamics of their cap situation. But given what you said, that's all the more reason to pay this man now. You pay him now. Pay him as early as possible. Don't defer this decision. You pay him now. It's cheaper. And then if you do get to a point, like in the next couple of years, where you're like, we got to move on from him, then you would have already used up a couple years of the contract, and you can go from there. If you want to push it and push it and push it, and then like give him an extension, a 5-year extension after 5 years, then you are like stuck with him, which is not a bad place to be stuck because he is incredibly good. But my criticism, my issue with Kyler Murray, or actually with the Cardinals, is not with Kyler Murray. It's with Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim and their decisions to stick, and Bidwell's decision to stick with both of them, because the roster has not been good, especially on the defense. They've taken some swings and they've missed, and the play calling has like devolved over the course of the season. Like, all of us were very critical of the Kingsbury hire for obvious reasons. He wasn't even good enough to get a head coaching job in college, and somehow he gets the head coaching job in the NFL. And then I started watching him, and I was like, oh, I might have to eat my words, because I thought that they were progressive and smart. They were able to run. They were running the ball when I thought that he was going to be spread, throw it all over the place. But it seems like as the season goes on, he gets more conservative and worse. And they're like, let's sign me up for 5 more years of that. And that's, if I'm Kyler Murray, I want my money, but I'm also like, I don't mind leaving this place because I don't think he's the right guy. Kingsbury,
yes.
that is.
Steve Keim, a.k.a. Suge White, who we cannot forget, got a DUI, kept his job, and then fired Steve Wilkes after one season. Now, I don't know whether or not Steve Wilkes should have been fired. I mean, there's obviously a clear argument for it. Nobody has hired him to be a head coach since, but you get my point. Cliff, who seems to be a very likable fellow, and has done better than I thought he would, just to be clear, because the defense of him with his record at Texas Tech was like, well, who can win at Texas Tech? When everybody that had the job for the previous 25, 30 years had done better than he had. Like, you can go look at it. He was the worst of all those cats. Other people had figured out how to get it done. He did not, and he had NFL quarterbacks, plural. Yeah. Baker Mayfield, Davis Webb, I mean, who's obviously not a great NFL quarterback, but he got drafted in the 3rd round, and then he got Patrick Mahomes. Like, they couldn't win games with Patrick Mahomes. Like, okay. And so I've had the same skepticism and criticisms that you had the same arc as you. Like, yo, this has gone better, and this is a pretty good team. But you're right. Everybody seems to catch up with what he's doing on offense. It's like he seems to make the changes that he needs to make almost at the beginning of the year. And then he'll be like, cool, well, we're going to make more changes at the end of the year. I have been stunned by how he figured out how to run the ball out of that set. I gave him credit for thinking he could run 4 wide receivers every play, realizing he couldn't. And then, he did those things. I just don't think he's supposed to be your head coach.
Yeah.
But whoever you bring in, if it's Murray, I don't know if your head coach is going to have to be a Cliff Kingsbury type. But whoever it is, you got to go all the way in on this quarterback and playing a type of football that at one point would have been revolutionary, but now seems a lot like what everybody else plays.
Yeah. I mean, if the thing you mentioned earlier is about options. Like, Kyler has options that no one else has. He has this baseball option, which gives him an extra bit of leverage. And by they, I mean more than the Cardinals. I mean more than the NFL. I mean all people that fall in the category of the man. They don't want you to have no options. And the worst thing in the world is for a man with some options who can tell you, who has FU money or FU opportunities and can tell you that. So they particularly hate that right now. And then on top of it, they don't got no options.
Right.
What you gonna do without Kyler? It's the only spark y'all had since Kurt Warner. Y'all better not play with that. As expensive as all this stuff is, you better pay that man.
Even if it wasn't a spark, there just aren't quarterback. How much money have we watched Kirk Cousins make?
Yep.
Because there aren't quarterbacks. They just aren't there. And so if he wants to lean in on it and think, look, man, if you follow the history of Kyler Murray, you got to understand something about him. He is quite possibly the greatest high school football player ever in the state of Texas. I'm not saying that to say that matters for anything right now. I am saying, though, that it matters in the discussion of how Kyler Murray views himself.
Yeah.
How Kyler Murray and his father see his talents and what he is able to do. That man is not no dude who's under no misgivings about just how important he is. Trust me. He gets it. What they say? He knows his worth.
and it's more than 35 over 2.
Yes.
And
yeah.
y'all better
like,
pay
this is
up.
crazy talk.
Yeah.
Yo, and then you get Lamar on the other side. Lamar just over here like, yeah, I get to it when I get to it.
I've been thinking about the Lamar situation often, and I know that there is like career-ending insurance and there's like career devaluing insurance. I'm assuming he got it. Because if he does have that, then ain't nothing to worry about. Because he's proven himself as an MVP. If he was trying to get the free agency, like true free agency, and he wants to wait to get there, then fine. If you have all this insurance to protect you, otherwise it doesn't make sense to me. Not engaging them, and we don't know the deals that are out there. So the first reaction is to react to the stories that are put out there, which obviously have a slant, and that's like Lamar not trying to get a deal done. And to us, we're like, what? Everybody want to get a deal done as soon as possible. But we don't know how this process has gone. They offered him something he don't like. Then Deshaun Watson, coming off of his allegations, signed a monster guarantee. And then if I'm Lamar, I go back to them like, I want that. He don't got no MVPs. And I ain't got in trouble.
Yeah, that's the issue right there.
Yep.
Like, this is why the owners had to be furious.
Yep.
There's no argument for paying Deshaun Watson more money than you pay Lamar Jackson.
Not one. And if I walk in to the office, was it Costas now? Or Costa now? I walk into his office and say, like, and people make a big deal about Lamar not having an agent. You don't need an agent. You go take that deal that Deshaun signed and you cross his name out and cross out the last digit before the decimal point and put one more on it, and then write your name in his place and put it on his desk. I don't need nobody to negotiate that for me. It's that simple when you're as good as he is.
Yeah, except you need the agent just so we don't have to do this, right? Like, this is... if he had an agent, this is done. Regardless of what the money is. Not saying it gets done for less, but I feel like, this is a young dude that don't feel like doing this right now. Yeah. Right? They're like, you want to get this contract done? No, man, I'm enjoying my summer, man. I'm going to holler back at y'all at the end, right? Or maybe his game is, I'm going to play this all the way out, and then I'm going to have all the leverage, which, I mean, that is a play. You can do that, because the thing about the career-ending insurance thing is, your career has to end.
I think they do have devaluing insurance too. I'm not sure. I know. Okay. I've heard people have gotten that, so I don't know about his case.
Yeah. But I know getting the money isn't so easy. Yeah. It's just filling out a form, and then they hit you back, and they give you your dough, right? Like, this is the reason I thought he needed an agent. It's not about his capabilities or whether he's bright enough to handle his deals, just who wants to hassle. Yeah. Like, I personally would not want to hassle. Now, what I also wonder in this, he may not have an agent, but he does have a mama, and she ain't no joke from every indication that I've received. And so maybe she's doing that. Maybe she's on the calls. You know what I'm saying? Maybe she's the one that's handling these things. I don't have a great answer for that. But I think having a rep would just make it's worth. It's not even 10% in the league. It's 3. Yeah. It would be worth the 3.
I agree with you. I'd rather have the representation. However, I think the impulse is for everyone to say that what he's doing is dumb and wrong. And I know you're not.
No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah, I know you're not saying that. But so I've tried to look at this because it's unorthodox. I've tried to look at this and figure out how this helps. And the way I think that maybe it's better for him, and this is obviously me challenging myself to make this argument, is agents work for you, but it is in their best interest to have good relationships with the teams. You come and you go. The GMs, the coaches, they're going to be there forever. So as much as you I pay him, he worked for me. The incentive, maybe it's true that he's going to fall on his sword. He's going to burn down all his relationships. He's going to do whatever he can to get you the best deal, or she. Maybe it's true. But the incentive is that they keep their relationships with these other dudes, because the more players going to come through.
That's true. That's
true.
Your
mama? There's one thing I know about mamas, all mamas, is they're going to have their kids back.
Yeah, but I think the only thing is they think they can play y'all, and maybe you will ultimately demonstrate that they can't play y'all, but I would like to save time and not have to go through this period of demonstrating.
I had an agent my whole career.
Yeah, man. Nah, you got a chef, but you ain't got no agent. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's all. I don't. I don't get the logic. I don't know if he has a chef, but I bet he do. Like, I don't. Nah, couldn't be me. What'd you think about Aaron Donald? Because I had been hearing since the day of the Super Bowl about the retirement stuff, and then the retirement stuff came. It's a little before the Super Bowl, but then the retirement stuff became public, and now he wants his bread. Or he says that he will retire, and I'm kind of like, dog, do you just really want to retire? Because if you do, just go ahead.
Yeah. It's a weird position to take, because to me, it doesn't make sense. I think he's set to get 15 or something. And I think that puts him somewhere in the 100 highest paid players in football. He wants to be the number one defensive player. I don't know what that number is, probably 30 something, I'm guessing. So if you are threatening, maybe that's the wrong word. I don't know. I'm going to use threatening. If you're threatening to retire because you want more money, I'm supposed to believe that you ain't going to show up for the money that's on the table? That's the hard logical leap. That's the one that's hard for me to, logical leap it is for me to make is, okay, you want to like hold out, you want to scare this team into paying you. It just doesn't make sense because I'm like, you want money. You want more money. So you going to leave 15? No, you're not. You're not going to leave 15. If you're ready to retire, then you're going to retire. If you're not ready to retire and you want more money, you're going to get more money. So I am all for, you know me, I want players to get paid. I want them to get his money, but it just don't make sense as a strategy to me to say I'm fine with folding it up. Like it would make more sense to say like, I want to get traded to someone who's going to pay me. That would make sense. And I'm willing to sit out because of it. I still have the hunger for football. I want to get more rings. But saying, man, 8 years, Hall of Fame career, I'll shut it down unless you pay me double.
Well, see, that's the thing. My question is the hunger for football.
Yeah.
And I don't say that as a judgment, just to be clear, right? But the reason I question that is we've been hearing about this dude talk about retiring for now almost like 4 months. Right? You hearing about that before the Super Bowl. Like going into the Super Bowl, you're looking at it like, yo, if I get this, I have nothing left to gain. And by the way, he has nothing left to gain. Like whatever it is that we think about Aaron Donald historically as a football player, it's all settled already, right? We are here. He is a rich man's John Randall, an incredible thing to say about somebody. And a team won a Super Bowl with him being the best player on that team where he made the play to shut it down and win the Super Bowl. Like, it's not really often that a defensive player is in a position to make the game-controlling, game-defining play as he did. And not just because it was random, right? Because he decided to be the dude to do it, right?
Defensive tackle.
It's all there.
At that.
At defensive tackle, correct.
That don't
at
happen.
3 technique.
He ended the NFC Championship game, and then he had the 2 final plays to end the Super Bowl. Proceed.
Yeah. Like, you realize how crazy it is to look at him and be like, oh, yeah, he's definitely better than Warren Sapp.
I was having this conversation over text with Himbo the other day about like who is the comp for him there, and Warren Sapp obviously came up, but he's definitely better than Warren Sapp, and Warren Sapp is ridiculous.
Yes. Somehow he's smaller than Sapp, but better, right? Like John Randall is like probably more of like the physical comp seems to hold, but John Randall was just like he if he was a basketball player, he'd get the Tommy points. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Aaron Donald is all that intensity and apparently the strongest man in the world.
It's outrageous. And the way that the game changed too, it made it more difficult to be impactful from where he is. And somehow he's more impactful than anybody ever at that spot. Yes. Craziness. It's craziness.
Nuts. And he just like, I mean, I feel like he gonna mess around and let them talk him into doing something he don't feel like. He'd be like Phil Jackson with the Knicks. Well, I'll take the job if you pay me $12 million.
Exactly.
Damn, they just offered me $12 million. Well, I guess I got to do that, huh?
That's absolutely right. And just like that, running a basketball team is the same as playing defensive tackle. You can't half-ass neither of those things. You're going to have to be in Slovenia watching these other leagues play ball. You're going to have to be in training camp banging heads with centers and guards. Like, it just has to be that way.
Yes. Now, we talked also, you mentioned earlier about Congress want Goodell and Dan Snyder to come holler at him for a little bit, let him know what was going on with the Commandos' little investigation. And it was a little investigation. I mean, it seemed to have a lot of pages, but the investigation fell little in the way that everybody surrounding it treated it. And you don't think they're going to take this man's team from him. I think they want to take this man's team from him. I think they're afraid he'll blow up their spot. They took Jerry Richardson's team from him, so I can't say that. I'm talking about the other owners. They took Jerry Richardson's team from him, so I can't say that they won't take a team from somebody. But Jerry Richardson, was willing to take one for the team. Dan Snyder ain't about to do that at all. He won't take one for his team.
That's the difference. They didn't take his team from him. He sold his team. He wasn't up for the fight. I don't believe that they got the 2/3 vote that you would need. I think it's 2/3 of the owners would have to vote in order to kick you out. I don't know a time when that's happened. Like they was like, look, man, we need you to slide up out of here. It's like back to the holdout analogy. We need you to leave. If he was like, nah, I don't think they voting him out. I just don't see it happening. And this case is interesting because like Congress wants to look into his financial, like look into his books. They also want to look at this investigation. They want to get all up in this man's organization. That's a precedent that they don't want to set. They are like 30 brothers in one house. And you may not like your brother, but when mama start going through drawers and stuff, you're like, ho, 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 ho. I want him to get a beating, but I don't want to set this precedent that you can look under people's beds. And that's how I feel like the two alternatives. One alternative is, or the two paths. One path is we run him up out the league, but we have to let all these people in and we have to set this precedent. The other path is we let him stay and he gets vitriol. Like, to me, that seems like the obvious path that they would want to follow, or just encourage him to sell his team, because that path does not involve subjecting themselves to the risk of having Congress. In the books is a big deal. When we're in negotiations, we try to do everything to understand what their real financial, what happens really in the finances of a team, because that's how they construct all their arguments. It's based on the fact that they're not making enough money. Those owners will do anything to make sure that no one gets a piece of them books. So I can't imagine that they're gonna, I mean, it was an invitation. It wasn't a subpoena. Roger ain't going to talk to nobody, and neither is Dan.
Yo, I can't believe that man really tried to steal that money from them cats. Like, that just seemed like some real low stuff to do. Like, how cheap is this? You're not just, and honestly, I guess the teams don't look that close at the line items, but I feel like this should have just been easy math, right? Like, you know how many seats that stadium got? You know how many tickets they say they sold? Like,
I mean, the accounting is incredibly complicated. So when I was at the NBPA, we would always have to do re-ups because it was basketball-related revenue was what the money was based on. And they would find ways, certain teams would find ways to, like, so here's an example. You would get signage in your stadium, and the sponsors would pay a certain amount of dollars to have signage in a stadium. And the team would go back, and since the signs didn't change, and they would also have like ice capades and other concerts in there, the signage there, they would go and try to say, and you negotiate with the sponsor, one price. They go and say like, all right, well, 40% of this signage is because they wanted the people at ice capades to see it. You know, so like there, I don't understand exactly how Dan was over here skimming, or Dan's guys were skimming, because I don't imagine. My guess is like Dan knows about everything, but my guess is he wasn't in there like, hey, let's skim some. It's just people trying to read their numbers. They trying to get to where they need to go. They trying to get an attaboy from the boss, and they're like, you know where we could skim a little bit. And so like when it's a big organization like that, there's a lot of moving parts. In accounting, it's all about how you define certain things. You can define things differently. It can't be that hard to steal.
I just don't know why Dan Snyder don't sell this team, because nobody's happy with him owning it. Not even the teams that play against his team who are happy for the wins. Nobody's happy for him to be around. He doesn't seem happy being around.
That was my first question. And I guess that maybe that's the difference between people who become billionaires and me, is like, it's too much hassle. I don't need people to know my name that much. I don't want a Super Bowl ring that bad. Like, assuming that, I mean, I know Dan Snyder accepts that there were bad things going on in his organization. He's not willing to accept that he, like, participated in, which there are allegations that he did. But either way, I don't want to have to run this foolishness, keep getting whooped every week, and then also we out here assaulting people. Like, give me my, what they worth now, 5, 7? Give me my $10 billion, because Jeff Bezos will pay it in a second, and let me go somewhere else and do something else.
Yeah, I can only assume that he's just unhappy everywhere else, right? Because like I say, the unhappiness for everybody associated with what he's doing now is clear. I can just assume for him that he don't see the difference between being that where he at versus being that where he was going to ultimately wind up being. That's all I've got. It is, because I've talked about this. The history of that franchise is weird because we think of them as being one of the great franchises, but they're not, actually. They've been one of the worst franchises. They just had an 11-year run with Joe Gibbs where they really got some stuff done, right? Like they got, the George Allen years weren't so bad, but other than that, man, they was boo-boo because they decided being racist was more important than winning football games, right? After Joe Gibbs left, nothing cracked, right? It was pretty good when a little bit good when Joe Gibbs came back around, but they haven't had it. Like, this is not a traditionally great franchise. We've just conned ourselves into believing that because they did it right at a good time. So what is there here, right? They try to build a stadium. Don't nobody really want them to do it? Nobody really wants to be the one to have their little stadium. You know how hard it is to be that way with an NFL team?
They trying to go to Virginia now. They doing all types of stuff. It is a mess. And I think you're right. I hadn't really considered it because you're right. In my mind, the Washington football team, like it feels like football. It feels like the NFL. And it's probably just because they were like good at the time when like football was blowing up. and then they had the Doug Williams year, which like does not right any of the wrongs of their history, but it changes the perception on it. But that's one of the wild things. Like, this city is becoming, where I live now in DC, is becoming less and less black, but it's been one of the blackest and like successful black cities in all of the country. And if you come here, you will see more black people in Cowboys starter jackets than anything else.
Yeah.
And it is only because they racist.
Yeah, I'll say, see, that's the thing that people don't understand about us as black folks, which is if we got to root against somebody, it's possibly the white folks closest to us, right? Like the white folks that are actually treating us badly on a day-to-day basis. We are not on board with that team. So in Washington, you're right. It is the whole idea of this rivalry between those two teams, at least to me, has always just seemed to be about black people in that area, right? Because that's really what it comes down to. Because the people that were rooting for that team that was playing Dixie and everything else, man, like Joel gives me hell for rooting for Texas, but like when I did that, it was much later in time, like I had no recollection or understanding of all that stuff that was being discussed. With that team, everybody knows what time it is. And they were the over the top. They were the Ole Miss of football, basically.
And open about it. And it's a heritage that gets passed down. It's like you hear people talking about it. And maybe they changed their name. Maybe some things are changing. I don't know. But they aren't good either. So, like, you're not going to get the young black fans now because, like, I'd be willing to bet that there are more black Cowboy fans in Washington than there are like Commanders fans, because like I grew up in Baltimore and I heard the stories. Yeah. And we didn't have a team when I was growing up. So like maybe I root for Washington. And black men around me was like, no, my friend. That's what we ain't gonna root for. You root for whoever you want, but not them.
Yo, and it ain't like Baltimore is some progressive, like ahead of its time. But the Colts had Big Daddy Lipscomb and cats out there. You know what I'm saying? Like, meanwhile, they over there literally whistling Dixie.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are other teams that were doing the same thing. But to your point you made a second ago, but you the white people closest to us.
Yes.
And you the white people who are throwing it in our face. And it was, I don't know. I don't have those same memories of the Colts or Washington because, like, I wasn't paying attention at those times. But when I was paying attention to football, Washington was pretty good when I first started. And the Colts were long gone. And I was like, all right, I'm close to here. Nah, how about you go ahead and root for them 49ers instead? I was not allowed.
This is what you're not going to do.
Which you ain't going to do is root for that team who has that openly racist past and present, because they were still called the R's back then.
You might as well have come in and said you was going to root for Duke. Like, no, I didn't know you was already ready to get your own apartment. You're a precocious young man.
My dad grew up in Charlotte, in a place called the Rocks in Charlotte. So he was a UNC fan. And Duke, like, you know this, I don't have to explain it to anybody else. UNC is not like some incredible liberal progressive bastion, but it is compared to Duke. And if you grew up in Charlotte, you rooting for UNC is like rooting for the NAACP.
Yeah.
And there was no chance that I remember watching all them tournaments, ACC tournaments, and we was wearing Carolina blue and cheering for the good guys, Dean Smith and the Blacks.
Yeah, you got to remember this, though. Carolina is not the most liberal progressive bastion in the world. But the word was Jesse Helms used to call it UNC, the University of N-words and Communists. It is definitely more liberal than NC State.
Right.
Like you get to Duke. Like when you start comparing it to the local homies, you be like, oh yeah, man, it does feel a little bit like Berkeley.
I didn't know the NC State stuff until I was getting recruited. And so, like, we didn't think about NC State much when I was coming up, even though, like, I watched ACC and we root for Carolina basketball. Like, NC State, okay, whatever. It was like, it was UNC and Duke. And then NC State started recruiting me, and my dad never really wanted to, like, push me to go to any place or another. But I felt his mood change when the NC State, when Chuck Amato came to my crib. I felt it. And he wasn't going to stop me from going there, but I was like, oh, okay. This ain't the move. Oh, Chuck Amato, man. Old barrel chested ass.
Chuck's an interesting dude. That's the best I can put it. Chuck was an interesting dude. But hey, this has been Foxworth Friday. That is Domonique Foxworth. Check him out on Get Up. Check him out on Anscape. Check him out on Debatable. Check him out wherever he is to be checked out. It's greatly appreciated, sir.
Always, man.
All right, now. Also, before we forget, The Right Time Book Club, first episode is June 13th. June 13th, Howard Bryan will be our first guest. The book is King of the World by David Remnick. Need you to read up to page 163. Page 163 by June 13th. Also, hit the voicemail line, 860-516-4119. Let us know about your fantasy football dispute like them dudes scrapping it out in baseball over that. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us here on The Right Time. We do this 3 times a week. Gabe Bassane and Adi Khan handle things behind the scenes. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for watching on YouTube. Remember, follow The Right Time. Rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars, I'm inclined to believe you are a hater. And we'll talk to you guys in a couple of days. Take it easy.